Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Jason Carter never imagined his life would turn upside down on a Sunday afternoon. He was sitting on the living room couch when Hannah, his wife who was 4 months pregnant, came over with a smile he couldn't quite read. She was holding her phone and seemed excited about something. Jason paused the football game he was watching and looked at her curiously. Hannah sat down beside him and started talking about the baby they were expecting, about how important it was to choose the right godfather, someone who could be a positive role model in their child's life. So far, everything seemed normal. But then she dropped the bomb. "I've been thinking about asking Miles to be the godfather," she said casually, as if she were commenting on the weather. Jason's stomach tightened. Miles Turner was Hannah's ex-boyfriend, from a relationship that had lasted 3 years before she'd met Jason. "And you know, I'd also like to give our son his name. Miles is a nice name, and it would be a way to honor my first love," she added, still smiling. Jason froze. He couldn't react right away. He felt a mix of anger, confusion, and a deep ache in his chest he couldn't explain. This wasn't just about a name or a godfather. It was about respect, about what their marriage meant, about his own identity as a husband and father. Hannah took his silence as agreement and kept talking about how wonderful it would be to have Miles involved in the baby's life, as if Jason didn't even exist in that equation. That night, Jason barely slept. He lay next to Hannah, listening to her calm breathing as she slept without a care, while his mind raced with 1,000 thoughts. Something was wrong. Very wrong. It wasn't normal for a pregnant woman to want to give her current husband's child the name of her ex-boyfriend. None of it made any sense, unless there was something he didn't know. The next day, Jason called Grant Foster, a friend from college who'd been a cop and now worked as a private investigator. Grant answered on the second ring and immediately sensed from Jason's voice that something serious was going on. They arranged to meet at a quiet cafe downtown. When Jason told him the whole story, Grant fell silent for a few seconds before speaking. "Look, I hope I'm wrong, but this smells like betrayal." "No woman makes a suggestion like that without a reason," Grant said, looking his friend straight in the eye. Jason felt his world collapse, but he knew he needed the truth. "I need proof. I can't accuse my pregnant wife without being sure," he replied, his voice shaking. Grant agreed and explained he'd run a full investigation, but Jason would have to stay calm at home and act normally so as not to raise suspicion. The next few days were the hardest of Jason's life. He'd wake up, make breakfast for Hannah, take her to doctor's appointments, listen to her plans for the nursery, and pretend everything was fine. Inside, he was slowly dying. Every smile from her felt like a stab. Every time she mentioned the name Miles was like poison in his veins. But he kept up the act because he knew he had to see this story through to the end. A week passed like an entire year. Grant called and asked to meet again, but this time his voice was serious and heavy. When Jason arrived at the detective's office, he found a brown folder on the desk. Grant slid it toward him and simply said, "I'm sorry, man." Jason opened the folder with trembling hands. The first photos showed Hannah and Miles entering a downtown hotel together. There were more pictures, the two of them walking hand in hand in a park, sharing an ice cream cone. There were videos too, recorded by Grant from a distance, showing them passionately kissing before getting into her car. Tears streamed down Jason's face uncontrollably. Everything made sense now. The outrageous request, the ex-boyfriend's name, the invitation to be godfather. Hannah wasn't just cheating on him, she was carrying Miles's child and wanted Jason to raise it as his own. It was a cruelty he never imagined anyone could be capable of. But Jason wasn't the same naive man who'd blindly trusted his wife anymore. He knew exactly what he had to do. He gathered the evidence and went home with a plan in mind. When he got there, Hannah was in the kitchen making dinner. He walked up behind her, hugged her, and kissed her neck. She smiled and said she loved him. Jason replied that he loved her too, but inside, he was completely dead. That night, after dinner, Jason sat down beside Hannah on the couch and started the conversation that would change everything. "Hannah, I need to show you something," he said calmly, pulling out his phone and showing her the photos. Her face went pale instantly. She tried to grab the phone, but Jason pulled it away. "You cheated on me. With Miles. The same Miles you want as godfather of our child," he said, each word landing like a verdict. Hannah burst into uncontrollable sobs. At first, she denied everything, saying the photos were old and meant nothing. But when Jason showed her the videos with recent timestamps, she changed tactics. She said it was a mistake, a moment of weakness, that she never meant to hurt anyone, that she still loved him deeply. Jason listened in silence, waiting for her to finish her speech full of empty apologies. Then he asked the question he needed to ask. "Is this child mine, Hannah?" The silence that followed was deafening. Hannah opened her mouth to respond, but no sound came out. Tears streamed down her face as she struggled to find words that might save the situation. "Yes, I swear it's yours," she finally said, but her trembling voice gave away the lie. Jason stood up and walked to the window. He stared out at the dark street for a few minutes before turning back to her. "Here's what we're going to do. There's a test called a non-invasive prenatal DNA test that can be done during pregnancy without risking the baby. If you're really telling the truth, if this child is mine, I'll forgive you for everything. We'll forget this ever happened and move forward. But if you're lying, Hannah, if this child isn't mine, then there's nothing left between us." Hannah panicked. She cried even harder, begged him not to do it, insisted it was unnecessary because she was certain the baby was his. But Jason wouldn't budge. It was either the test or an immediate divorce. Cornered and out of options, Hannah agreed to take the test. The days waiting for the results were tense. Jason temporarily moved into the guest room and barely spoke to Hannah. She tried to get close, cooked his favorite meals, left sweet notes, but he was immune to any show of affection. His mind was focused on just one thing, finding out the truth. When the envelope with the results arrived in the mail, Jason was home alone. His hands shook as he opened it. He read the result once, twice, 3 times, just to be sure he wasn't misreading it. There it was, in clear, straightforward letters: probability of paternity, 0%. He wasn't the father. Jason sat on the living room floor and let the tears fall freely. It wasn't just sadness, it was anger, disappointment, the feeling that he'd wasted years of his life on someone capable of such deception. When Hannah came home a few hours later, she found Jason sitting at the kitchen table with the test results in front of him. She didn't need to ask anything. One look at his face told her everything the paper said. She started talking rapidly, making up absurd excuses, saying maybe the test was wrong and they needed to do another one. Jason simply pushed the paper toward her and walked out of the room. But Jason wasn't a man who did things halfway. If Hannah wanted to destroy their marriage, he'd make sure everyone knew the truth. He scanned the photos, the videos, and the DNA results and prepared a message. He had a family group chat with over 100 people, parents, uncles, cousins, grandparents from both sides. At 8 o'clock that evening, Jason sent everything to the group with a simple note: "So everyone knows the truth about who Hannah Mitchell really is." What followed was absolute chaos. Hannah's phone didn't stop ringing for a second. Messages poured in from every direction, calls, voice notes. Her family was shocked. Her mother called in tears demanding explanations. Jason's family reacted with anger and outrage. His father said he should have sent the evidence sooner. But Jason didn't stop there. He searched social media and discovered that Miles was married. He found his wife's profile, her name was Rebecca, and sent her all the evidence too. Rebecca replied in less than 10 minutes. "Thank you for showing me who I really married," she wrote, and Jason knew he wasn't alone in his pain. 2 days later, Miles received divorce papers. Rebecca didn't want to hear excuses, apologies, or second chances. She simply ended the marriage and moved on. Desperate and scared by the situation, Miles tried calling Hannah repeatedly, but she wouldn't answer. He showed up at the house she and Jason shared, but Jason met him at the door. The two men stared at each other for a few seconds before Jason spoke. "The child is yours. Hannah is 4 months pregnant with your baby. Now you're going to take responsibility." Miles turned pale. He tried to deny it, saying he couldn't be sure and needed tests. Jason tossed a copy of the DNA results at his chest. "It's not mine. And you two were meeting right around the time of conception. Do the math." Miles picked up the paper from the ground and walked away without another word. In the weeks that followed, Miles tried to convince Hannah to start a relationship. After all, she was carrying his child, he'd just gotten divorced because of her. It seemed logical to try building something together. But Hannah flatly refused. She didn't want Miles, she wanted Jason. She wanted the comfortable life she'd had with him, the nice house, financial stability, the respect of their community. Miles had none of that to offer. Miles, however, didn't run from his responsibility. Even though he wasn't in a relationship with Hannah, he said he'd take on fatherhood. He attended some medical appointments and made it clear he'd be present in the child's life. It wasn't what he'd planned for his future, but it was the right thing to do. Meanwhile, Jason was packing his bags. He couldn't live in that town anymore, where everyone knew the story, where people looked at him with pity, where every street corner held a memory of Hannah. He secured a transfer to a branch office in another city, over 500 miles away. He sold the house, divided their assets as his divorce lawyer directed, loaded his things into his car, and drove away. The new city was smaller and quieter. Jason rented a simple apartment and started over from scratch. In the first few months, he woke up every night with nightmares about Hannah and Miles. He'd toss and turn for hours, replaying every detail of the betrayal, every lie, every moment when he should have seen the signs. But slowly, with therapy and physical and emotional distance, Jason began to heal. He met new people at work, formed genuine friendships, and returned to hobbies he'd abandoned during his marriage. He started running every morning, learned to cook new dishes, and adopted a dog who accompanied him on walks through the city parks. Life was beginning again, slowly, but it was happening. A year after everything went down, Jason was at a local coffee shop when he got a message from an unknown number. It was Rebecca, Miles's ex-wife. She was passing through town for work and asked if he'd like to grab coffee. Jason hesitated for a moment, but something inside told him to say yes. When they met, they realized they shared more than just the pain of betrayal. They talked for hours about their experiences, how they'd handled everything, and the challenges of rebuilding their lives after something like that. There was a genuine connection between them, a kind of understanding only someone who'd been through something similar could offer. They started talking regularly, first through texts, then video calls. Rebecca traveled a lot for work, and whenever she passed through Jason's city, they'd meet up. It wasn't romance, at least not at first. It was friendship, companionship, someone who understood exactly what the other had been through without needing explanations. Months went by, and that friendship deepened into something more. Neither of them was looking for love, both were too cautious after everything they'd been through. But love has a funny way of showing up when you least expect it. On a rainy night, when Rebecca was back in town, they finally admitted what they felt for each other. Their relationship grew in a healthy, respectful way. There were no lies, no secrets. Both had learned the hard way the value of honesty and transparency. Jason discovered it was possible to trust again, that not everyone was like Hannah. Rebecca realized she deserved to be truly loved, not just when it was convenient. Hannah, according to rumors that reached Jason through mutual acquaintances, was raising the child alone. Miles paid child support and saw the kid on weekends, but there was no relationship between them beyond parental responsibility. She'd lost everything, the husband, her family's respect, the comfortable life she'd had, all because of selfish, thoughtless choices. One night, late, Hannah sent Jason a long message. She begged for forgiveness, said she'd been the biggest fool in the world, that she'd lost the best man she'd ever known. Jason read the message, sighed deeply, and blocked her number. There was nothing left to say. Forgiveness didn't mean going back, and he'd learned that some bridges, once burned, shouldn't be rebuilt. The lesson Jason took from that painful experience wasn't about betrayal or lies, it was about his own worth. He learned he deserved to be truly loved, without games or manipulation. He learned it was possible to trust again, but that it also took courage to investigate when something didn't feel right. He learned that exposing the truth, no matter how painful, was better than living a lie. And most importantly, he learned that starting over wasn't a sign of weakness, it was a sign of strength. Because only the strong can leave an entire life behind and build something new from the ground up, carrying their scars but refusing to let them define who they are. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.